Good Sunday evening, everyone, and welcome into another installment of the Rocky Top Rewind. I am Brent Hubbs. Eric Kane not with us tonight, but we've got a fun show lined up for you here on the Rocky Top Rewind as Tennessee advances to 7-0 on the season. The Volunteers 65-24 winners over UT Martin. They move up in the coaches poll. They're now number 3 nationally in both the Associated Press and the USA Today coaches poll. Plenty of great things going on for Tennessee at this point in time in the volunteer football program as they turn their sights back to SEC play, getting ready to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. That is a 7 p.m. start Saturday night on ESPN. We got a fun show lined up for you tonight. Former Vol running back Aaron Hayden, who knows a good bit about this Tennessee offense, and Josh Heupel is going to join us to talk about I will tell a couple of old stories about his day, and we'll talk a little bit about the growth of this offense and the evolution of offense in college football and why this is working so well at Tennessee. Then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk to Eastern Kentucky head coach Walt Wells, who is a Tennessee guy, who is also was on the Kentucky staff. He knows Mark Stoops really well. We'll talk a little bit about what Mark Stoops has done at Kentucky and a little preview of the Wildcats. And then Austin Price will join me at the end of the show. We'll talk a little recruitment and see where the Vols are with that, what this weekend may look like in recruiting. Tennessee picking up a commitment on Friday night from class of 2024. Defensive back Caleb Beasley, as he committed after his high school game. We'll talk about that. We'll give you an update on where things stand with a guy like David Hobbs and lots of other things going on in recruiting. So that's coming up at the end. As always, we want to take your questions and your comments. So jump on into the comment box and offer them up tonight about this Tennessee football team, who, again, I thought was extremely impressive. I'll give them a ton of credit. I knew they would beat UT Martin. That was never a doubt in my mind. Even if Tennessee was really sloppy and flat, I didn't think there was any doubt Tennessee would not win the game. But just really impressed with the maturity of this football team on Saturday and how they showed themselves and how quick of a start they got off to. A quick 3 and out from Martin, and then quickly turned that into points. And just an impressive day. You see the stats there. Hendon Hooker, 18 of 24, 276, 3 touchdowns. I thought Joe Milton was interesting. I thought Joe played well. Stats-wise, 4-7, 135 for a touchdown. I thought he was late with the ball at times in the second half. I think that was a byproduct of just working with some guys he probably hadn't worked with a whole lot when you talk about that offensive line and some of those receivers. But when he went in the ballgame in the second quarter, that offense didn't miss a whole lot. He threw a couple of really big strikes. The one to Walker Merrill was a really good ball. And obviously Hendon Hooker continues to play well. And then what we're seeing right now out of Jalen Hyatt is just bananas. I've never seen anything. Nobody's ever seen anything like this in terms of what he's done. He has 8 receptions this season of 40 yards or more. Really can't. I don't know how to describe what he's doing right now. He's on pace to shatter every Tennessee record as a receiver. I've talked about this before. I mean, just one of the great stories in college football, and certainly one of the best stories on this Tennessee football team. In the day and age of the transfer portal, you just wondered what was going through his mind at the end of last year. And I've told this story before, but I can't oversell it, to be honest with you. He walked through that complex every day. His head was down. He had his earbuds in. He had a hood on his head. He just didn't look like he was very happy and not very happy to be at Tennessee. And instead of packing his bags, instead of pouting and leaving, he dedicated himself to himself and to football. And that's something he was not doing, to his own admission. And now you see what he's doing and his continued dedication. I mentioned this in the 10 Things review piece I wrote today. It's not just his production, it's his engagement. If you watched him on the sideline, he was talking to those young receivers, trying to help them out as much as he could, coaching them up. You go back to the end of the Alabama game after the Brew McCoy catch, he was immediately signaling timeout because he knew exactly the situation in football. He's completely dialed in. How many times do we see a guy, doesn't know what the down is or how much time is left? He was completely dialed in, and even though the ball didn't go to him on either one of those plays. Just an amazing transformation in terms of where he's at right now. And what he has done is just crazy numbers. And teams are having a really hard time defending him. And we're going to talk to Aaron Hayden about that. How do you defend this Tennessee offense, and why is it so hard to defend right now? And not just the personnel, but things that they're doing schematically. So we'll talk to him coming up as well, and certainly take your questions. Kentucky, of course, was off this weekend. Will Levis should be a healthier than he was the last time we saw him. And Kentucky's most impressive performance was the last time we saw the Wildcats play, and that was against Mississippi State in a home win. But Kentucky's not played a quarterback like Hendon Hooker. They've not played an offense that pushes it down the field. If you watched any of Mississippi State last night, they did not attack Alabama the same way Tennessee did. They didn't go over the top very much at all. They really just the underneath the West Coast offense, things like that. So Kentucky's not. You look at their wins. Florida, they don't have the ability to really throw it over anybody's head. You look at what Mississippi State does. They don't really challenge you vertically like that. So this will be new for the Kentucky secondary. It hasn't been, it hasn't been like that at all. So it's fun, and Tennessee fans should enjoy every minute of what is going on right now. The Tennessee defense, the rushing defense continues to be good. It gets better seemingly every week. Last three opponents, I think they've held to a total of about 81 yards rushing that they're giving up right now. This will be a different challenge when you look at where the Kentucky run game is, most physical run game that Tennessee's probably seen in terms of the backs. So Kentucky's going to want to slow this thing down, right? They're going to want to do what they did a year ago. They want to take the air out of the ball if you can, try to keep Tennessee on the sideline. If they can do that, they won time of possession last year, but they fell behind so fast because Tennessee blitzed them right out of the gate. Can Tennessee get off the field better this year defensively? Tennessee got wore out in that game a year ago. Late, obviously, they blitzed and made enough plays to win it and hold on for the win in a day where it looked like they were in complete control of that football game. But they were kind of hanging on at the end because that defense was pretty gassed. Tennessee's playing 12 guys on the defensive front. I don't think they're getting nearly as gassed when you look at their snap numbers. It's not nearly as much as it was a year ago. So much better for Tennessee defensively that way. And, we'll see what it looks like and what happens. It's all in front of Tennessee right now. I know everybody wants to know and talk about playoff numbers and where you're at and your position there. Everything that Tennessee wants is in front of them. The question is, can they continue to roll the way they've been rolling offensively, and can they get some guys healthy? The most significant injury to come out of yesterday was Taven Jackson. That's a left shoulder collarbone area injury. We'll see what the final result of that is. Otherwise, Tennessee looks like they got through the game healthy. Brandon Turnage, I think, is going to be okay this week and should probably be ready to go. I know a lot of you have asked about Jalen McCullough. That will be up to the legal system. That's not a Tennessee thing. That's going to be up to whatever the legal system does there. Then you look at Cedric Tillman. Is he going to play? I think he'll probably give it a go, try to give it a go. I don't know that he's going to be 100%. We'll see how much he can push off. I know this extra week off was good for him in terms of he practiced a lot, but no need to push him in the UT Martin game. I think you'll see him dress. I don't think he'll play the high volume of snaps. So you're going to continue to see a lot of Ramel Keaton. Without a doubt, when you talk about where this offense is going in this game. And Keaton has been a real shot in the arm to Tennessee. I don't think anybody, even Tennessee staff, I don't think expected Ramel Keaton to perform and to be as productive as he's been since Cedric Tillman has been out. I think Kamal Haddon's going to be ready to go. I don't know about Christian Charles. I think that remains up in the air. So we'll have to see what happens there. Will we see more of William Wright? Who played in the secondary and had an interception. Tennessee's obviously trying to help, and find as much as they can find with corners right now. And that's something that's going to be an issue moving forward. Tennessee's got to continue to get corners and continue to get some guys healthy there. Michael there, real happy with his staff, but not thrilled with the development in the secondary. I was expecting more out of D. Williams. D. Williams doesn't look very comfortable playing cornerback right now. I thought that was a guy, some of the buzz that was about him out there in the preseason. A lot of people thought he was going to be a major contributor. So when they got him on the field and got him healthy, I thought that would give them a shot in the arm. That's not the case. They clearly feel more comfortable with William Wright right now than D. Williams. In that secondary, they're missing some tackles. I think that's got to be a concern a little bit for sure. Tennessee's got to tackle better. Getting Kamal Haddon back will help. I don't. I think the biggest thing they've got right now is I don't know that they have, other than Haddon, I don't know how many true corners that they have on this roster, and I think that's something they have to address in recruiting, and they have to address in the transfer portal. We know coming in, Jordan Matthews is going to be a true corner who I think can make an early contribution to this team, but they've got to have some continued help at that cornerback position for sure. That's the biggest thing. I think Slaughter's done some decent things at safety. Hasn't been bad. They played Wesley Walker back there a good bit as well. So we'll see. In terms of boosted 931, your question, trying Holiday and Callaway at corner. I don't think that's Jimmy Callaway is a guy who's got a lot of talent, but I don't think his football focus is where it needs to be. I don't think it has been since he's been here. That's why you've never seen him really move up the depth chart at the receiver spot. He's not getting on the field. I don't even think he's playing special team stuff right now. Holiday's a straight line speed guy, so I don't know that backpedaling and flipping his hips are in his toolbox, if you will. I don't think that is a natural position for him at all in terms of being a corner. So I don't think there's any help there to be a corner. Could somebody move over to play safety? I don't see that at this point. I think you're going to roll with what you have. We'll see where they are with Wesley Walker at the safety spot if McCullough's not back. Slaughter's obviously done some good things. I think both those guys have stepped in pretty nicely for Jalen McCullough the last couple of weeks. Corners, you kind of are where you are, and you kind of are who you are at this point in time. And we'll see what they can address moving forward. But for the rest of this season, I think it's kind of what you are, which means Tim Banks' defense has to be aggressive up front. They've got to get to people. They've got to get to the quarterback. They've got to create a lot of havoc up front with some of the things they do with their pass rush. Martin did a really good job of getting the ball out of their hands quickly yesterday and kind of not getting hit around. So we'll see what happens to that. But I think you are who you are at cornerback. Mr. T wants to know, after what Alabama did to the Mississippi State offense, is us dropping 52 on them even more impressive? Look, I don't think you have to worry about what anybody else does. When you put 52 points on the board against the Nick Saban defense, and clearly they were lost and didn't know really what to do or how to cover, I think that speaks for itself. Mississippi State plays a total different style of offense. I got to kick Mike Leach said on his press conference, yeah, I saw some things out of Tennessee that we've run before. And, he said that, their quarterback runs it better than Josh Heupel did. I don't see any of Tennessee's offense in Mississippi State's offense. Maybe a wide receiver screen or maybe a slant every now and then, but they don't do what Tennessee does. Those are two totally different offenses. They want to play this controlled passing game, and I don't know what Mike Leach was doing last night. You should kick that field goal in the first drive to try to get ahead and get the lead there, and you certainly don't go for it when you're backed up into your own territory the way that he did. He didn't help his football team out at all. I thought there was a little bit of a panic early in that game from him. But I think what Tennessee did to Alabama is impressive in its own right. I don't think you have to stack it up against anybody else for how they played and what they did against the Alabama defense. You haven't seen anybody do that to Nick Saban other than Joe Burrow and LSU. And they did that where he didn't have an answer to what they were doing. Alabama did not have an answer, obviously, to Jalen Hyatt and what Tennessee was doing offensively. Tennessee really kind of only stopped themselves in that game most of the time. Herb, what you got there? Honestly, never know how the committee will vote, but side-by-side resume, I don't see how the playoff committee doesn't have us number one when the polls come out. Do you? I'll be honest with you, Herb. Tennessee's not been in a place where I've done a whole lot of research about all the committee and what they're thinking and what they're doing there. I think Tennessee's resume in terms of the schools that they played, the teams that they played, they were ranked at the time. The win over LSU is going to look better and better as LSU continues to play. Pittsburgh's not been as impressive as people thought, but that LSU win, that Alabama win, is obviously going to speak for itself, and that should weigh in pretty heavily with this committee, I think, when you look at it. Ben wants to know, is Jalen Hyatt playing himself into a draft pick? Not only is he playing himself into a draft pick, he's playing himself into a high draft pick. And that's something that I think is pretty obvious with the way that he's playing right now. Remember this about the NFL draft. The NFL's changed. It's not just about – it's about pass rushers on defense. Offensively, it's about a quarterback, it's about left tackles, and it's about playmakers in space. And the running backs – just don't give just don't have the value that they once had in terms of their draft stock. That's why you don't see a ton of running backs go that high in the draft. Look at the runner receivers a year ago in the NFL draft. And you look at what Jalen Hyatt's done right there. You got 40 receptions for 769 yards. He's averaging almost 20 yards a catch. He's going to break the school record for touchdown catches in a season. The NFL loves those type players. They love a guy who can stretch the field vertically and go the way that they go. So he's absolutely playing himself into a draft pick. And I think he's playing himself way up the draft board. I think Jalen Hyatt and Darnell Wright are the two guys who have helped themselves the most to this point in the draft. I think Hendon Hooker is helping himself as well. Remember, part of this too is about need of teams in draft, and it's about what the rest of the draft looks like in terms of how many receivers are coming out, how many quarterbacks are available. The timing of the quarterback thing is really important. That's why Kenny Pickett made the right decision to stay. If he would have come out and not come back for that extra COVID year, he would not have been drafted where he was drafted as the first quarterback taken. So part of that is how do you fit into where the draft bodies look like and the numbers look like. But there's no doubt Jalen Hyatt is on everybody's radar screen. Anthony Webb says if Tennessee was better, then we would be number one. If Tennessee's defense was better, we'd be number one. I don't think Tennessee's defense is that bad. I mean, I think one of the weapons of Tennessee's defense is their offense, and I think their offense is helping them a great deal without any doubt. So I think that's something that is good for Tennessee and is helpful to Tennessee. They've got, they're limited in the secondary at corner. They're not what they need to be at corner. They're good against the run. Linebackers aren't great in space. There's some limitations there, no doubt. They don't have all the tools that they would like to have for their defense. But I think they're playing really well against the run. I do think the secondary's gotten a little bit better as we go along, and we'll see how they handle themselves on Thursday. Thursday. I'm looking at Michael's quote here on Saturday night against a top flight quarterback. Will Levis doesn't move around the way Bryce Young does. So can Tennessee get to Will Levis and create some problems? I think that's the biggest question mark there. So lots of good things going on with Tennessee right now. It's an exciting time. This football team has captured everybody's attention, as they should. They're all over the polls. It's really good, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody should enjoy the ride. Ben Hall wants to know, Hubs, is it fair to say that football now makes everyone seem limited on the back end? I think football right now is making it really hard on secondaries. I really do. I think it makes it really, really hard on secondaries to play defense because of what guys are doing and what teams are doing. And again, I want to talk to Aaron a little bit about some of this stuff because the way they spread it out and the way that they shrink the formation down without changing personnel is creating a lot of problems for defensive coordinators and defenses out there. So I do think it's hard on secondaries right now with the way college football is played. Calvin Corum, why has McCoy's production dropped off? There's no real tendencies to this team. I think one of the things with Alex Golesh is if he finds something that's working, he's going to ride it. And he's not afraid to do that. You go back and look at that Pittsburgh game and the number of targets that Cedric Tillman had in that game, and they didn't throw it any to the left side. And everybody was like, oh, I said this, they're a right-handed team. They just went where, if it wasn't broke, then why stop doing that? And Cedric Tillman was where they were most comfortable going, and they just kept going to that route because it was open. Brew McCoy had over 100 yards receiving against LSU. And so I think it's one of those deals where it'll come back to him. And I think there'll be opportunities for them there. They're just not they just don't have a ton of tendencies. I mean, if they get the right matchup, everything's about the matchup. And if they get a matchup like they like, they're going to exploit it. And right now, the matchup they're winning with the most is Jalen Hyatt. Brew McCoy is going to get his catches. I think it'll come back around to him. It may come back around to him this week, depending on how somebody plays them. But if teams are going to play the way they played the last few weeks, they're not going to stop going from Jalen Hyatt and letting him roll and make it happen for him. So I don't think it's a situation where Brew is hurt or he's banged up. He obviously had a huge catch in the Alabama game. He had 100 yards receiving against LSU. We're just at a point right now where you see this team and you figure everybody needs 100 yards receiving. And Brew McCoy did not get a lot of opportunities thrown his way. It was middle of the field. and it was the right side of the field in the passing game yesterday because that's some matchups that they like and that they wanted to exploit. Last question here before we get a break, then we'll get to Aaron Hayden, hopefully here on the other side. Matthew Thomas wants to know, are you surprised with how well the D-line has played? Rodney has done an amazing job. Matthew, I am surprised. I said this in the offseason. I felt like it would take two bodies to replace the number of snaps that Matthew Butler played. And what Matthew Butler did for Tennessee last year was pretty heroic in terms of the volume of snaps that he played and the production he had out of it. But this line is better because they're playing more bodies. Rodney Garner making a commitment to play 12 guys. Bryson Easton's running about 20 snaps a game, which is probably probably about maxed out for him. But it's also helped limit the number of snaps that Omari Thomas has had to play when you look at his snap count the last few weeks. And as a result, you got guys fresher in the second half than you had a year ago. So I think the ability to play more guys, you look at what they're doing, sliding Tyler Barron inside. I thought Tyree West was really good on Saturday against UT Martin. I thought it was great for him to get that many snaps. I think you're going to see more and more of him as we go down the backstretch of these 5 SEC games as a heavier part of that rotation. He's been playing, but I think he'll be deeper into that rotation as you get into the rest of the schedule in the SEC. So Rodney Garner's doing what he's done for 30 years, and that is he develops guys. And he's done a really good job developing this group of guys. He's getting good production out of them. Joshua Joseph continues to make some plays. They're getting good play out of Latrell Bumpus. And they're getting enough play out of enough guys to keep everybody fresh. He's done a really good job staying true to his commitment to play more people this year. All right, more questions. Keep rolling them in. I see the questions about Alex Golesh. We'll get to those. We'll talk to Aaron Hayden, hopefully coming up in a few minutes as well, right here on the Rocky Top Rewind. So stick with us. We got plenty more coming up. Plenty more discussion about the Vols, some discussion about the Kentucky Wildcats. We'll hit a little recruiting at the end of the show. That's all coming up here as you listen to the Rocky Top Rewind. Welcome back into the Rocky Top Rewind on a Sunday night after another winning day in Knoxville as Tennessee remains unbeaten, beating UT Martin by a score of 65-24. I am Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us tonight. Thanks for joining us. Keep those comments coming in. I want to welcome to the program good friend and a VFL who everybody still talks about a screen pass at Notre Dame. It was a pretty good play. He made a lot of plays during his time at Tennessee. We're going to welcome Aaron Hayden into the program here tonight on the Rocky Top Rewind. My man, Aaron Hayden in Memphis. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Sorry that I can't follow directions very well.
No, you're good, man. It's all good. You don't need to apologize for anything. I want to ask you this. I mean, you're a football guy. You followed the game. You obviously played it successfully, but you followed it, and you followed the evolution of the game. You watch Tennessee every week. You see what they're doing. Why is Tennessee's offense so successful? Why are people having a hard time figuring it out or catching up to it?
I think it's two things. I tell people all the time, and, everybody can say they called the Alabama game, but you can go check my tweets. I said you got to score 45 points to beat Tennessee because Tennessee is going to score 45 points. And the thing I think that makes the offense so hard to stop is Typo always has his foot on the gas pedal. And so when you watch Hugh Freeze beat Alabama, I think, 3 or 4 times?
Right.
He never wavered. Like, he was always, spreading the field, attacking cover 2 with seam routes and post. And, every other play, he took a shot. And I think Tennessee is doing that to people, and they're forcing you to play your best defensive coverage every time they snap the ball. And people just can't hold up and do that at the collegiate level.
All right, Aaron. So, listen, coaches spend the entire offseason diving in, right? Doing deep dives on stuff and doing early scouts on the opponents. Everybody saw what Tennessee did a year ago. They knew they were bringing the quarterback back. They knew that Josh Heupel was here. So you knew a lot of what the system was. So you're going to spend part of your summer off season devising a plan to attack that offense differently. What does hype? Is it the spread that takes away the things that you want to do defensively to attack them, or what is it that nobody has necessarily found a key to in year 2 when you knew what was coming?
I think it's a little blend of both from what I see. Sometimes they go wide, they're incredibly accurate and always in rhythm and on time. Then if you're gonna spread the box out, they'll run it just enough to keep you honest. And then if you start trying to cover the wide receivers, especially like when they stack and they throw the little bubbles outside, which are essentially another handoff or a 5-yard gain. If you start playing that and you unload the box, they run. If you load the box up, then they take their shots. And the thing I love that they do is when they spread you out, they force your safeties to play coverage. And most guys in the SEC are still built for the old offenses where that guy that's playing safety is another fast linebacker that comes down in the box and hit. And we did a hell of a job isolating number 2 from Alabama. I think they saw something Texas A&M, at least I thought I did, against Texas A&M, and they just kept every time they got a chance to get him one-on-one, they took full advantage of it. And so I just think if you're not able to get pass rush, and I think that's the difference in this offense from last year, I think they're not getting to the passer like they did last year. And even when they do, you're forced to rush 4, and when you do, then 5 beats you with his legs. So it's just it's a wildebeest right now of offense, and you got to think the Tillman kid's not even playing yet.
Life's different when you have a quarterback who can play, isn't it, Aaron?
It is, and when you think about the '90s, we had some very good quarterbacks when we were dominating, and now we're having that elite quarterback play again. And to be honest, I won't say any names, but that's really been the problem the last, probably 10 years is we hadn't had that guy that's a national guy that everybody's talking about around the country and up for the Heisman. When we have had those type of guys, I think that kind of makes it go. And then the other thing that I've noticed that I think Heupel and them have done one hell of a job doing is in that transfer portal with just the guys that they brought in, D-line, O-line, receivers, all those guys are contributing major minutes and are like real dudes. And that doesn't happen everywhere. I could think of about 5 of them that are really, really probably making themselves some money, but really making Tennessee a better team and giving Tennessee more depth.
Aaron, did you ever think we would see this league be this offensive oriented? I know this is not the first go of it. It's been this way for several years. You mentioned Hugh Freeze, but did you ever imagine that this is where college football would get to, and this is what the SEC would get to? You don't go out and necessarily hire the defensive coach. I know Kirby Smart is, and he's done good things, but everybody's looking for the next Josh Heupel, Hugh Freeze, the next offensive guru in this league, which for us old heads, that seems kind of mind-boggling, or at least it does to me.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my former running backs, me and Jay Graham, and we were just talking about where would we play in the SEC these days, because there's no 6'1", 225-pound running backs that you want to give it to 25 times now. Now it's kind of the Jabari Small guy that can run, catch, and do a little bit of everything. So Charlie Garner's probably the only one in my day that could play, and he'd be better than the Gibbs kid at Alabama, and that kid is phenomenal. But he's probably the only one from my day, that could play. And to really just answer your question, I think it's just evolved, and I think teams like Texas A&M are trying to do a little bit of both, and they're kind of getting left behind. But you look at that SEC West, you got Mississippi State, they're doing something different. You got us, we're doing something different. Of course, Lane Kiffin is doing something different what he's doing, and the guys that are trying to kind of stay with the traditional offenses. Even Alabama's slinging it around as good as Gibbs is. They're still slinging it around with a great quarterback that challenges you vertically. But I think Auburn and Texas A&M are kind of stuck in their way. And I'll be honest with you, South Carolina's actually doing it the old school way a little bit, ground and pound. Kentucky does it a little bit. But the teams that are really, really competing, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, those teams have just kind of, and Florida's always kind of, I guess, been like that. But they're really, really putting a premium on passing and then having a quarterback that can beat you with their feet.
Yeah, it's a receiver quarterback game now. It's just it's kind of crazy how it is, particularly when you think about what your running back room looked like. You
Yeah.
and I've talked about this not on shows. We've talked this a million times. How in the world did you guys not kill each other fighting for the football? When you talk about Little Man Stewart, you guys have that great freshman year together, and then, oh, by the way, we're going to bring in this Charlie Garner cat from JUCO. Then here comes Jay Graham, and then here's Mose Phillips. How did you guys stay cohesive? I know there was no portal. If there was a portal back then, I don't know what would have happened. But how did you guys keep harmony, if you will, in that room?
I tell you what, I think Coach Cutcliffe, number one, did an excellent job of keeping us all involved, keeping us all engaged. We all practiced like we were the starter. And then a lot of times we rotated like the first few series, and then whoever got hot, they kind of stayed with you. So they kind of kept us involved. And then I would say Coach Former was such a politician, and I mean that in like a real positive way. But he was such a politician that he'd say a little something in your ear, you're the man for this, when Bama come, you're going to get the ball, and, just stuff like that. And then I think we had an acceptance, and I always say this, and I'm very appreciative of Charlie Garner coming in there, because he just took all of our games to another level because he was just that phenomenal. And so I think he made, Little Man the best Little Man he could be. I know he made Aaron the best Aaron he could be, because it was either fight or flight. The guy was that good. And so if you wanted to be part of that and get your chances, you had to be special. And so every time you touched it, there was a desperation to be successful. And, I know we've talked about that before, but I think this transfer portal is such a easy way out now that I don't know that you get that anymore. If you got, 4 NFL guys sharing the same room, then they pull the Walker kid from Wake Forest, and he goes to Michigan State and becomes a Heisman Trophy winner. And you can't, Heisman Trophy candidate. And you can't argue with that. But I think there's something to be said for to sit here and talk to you about it now, having went through it, and the pain that goes with being the guy, then not being the guy, and then becoming the guy again. And that's something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I mean, mentally, it had to be extremely taxing, Aaron. I mean, at that age, right? I mean, you have the early success, and then all of a sudden they bring in a guy, and you first time you see him, you realize Charlie. I mean, you didn't need pads to understand that Charlie was going to play,
different.
right? I
he
mean,
was
he was legit. Yeah. I mean, mentally, it had to make you tougher, right? I mean, as you mentioned, sink or swim, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the approach we took, and it was really more. Everybody in that room was kind of like in your face. Like, we were so cool and tight, but on the field we were like in your face type guys with a lot of alpha males in that room. And so even though you see somebody and you go, yeah, this guy's gonna play, then you kind of look at the rest of the guys and say, I don't know which one of y'all gonna be the backup or be the guy that split carries, but I know I'm gonna be one of them. You know what I mean? And so it was just a matter of, I think we showed so much talent and took our games to that next level that it really made us a phenomenal team. And then I think our senior year, what me and Lil Man was able to do with our own games, I think is legendary, to be honest, because we had to carry that team that year.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were the show. I mean, and obviously that was the 1-2 punch because Charlie had moved on. Were there times where I mean, obviously nobody was going to tap out, right? I mean, you weren't going to tap your helmet and say, Coach, I need a blow after a few carries here.
No.
Were there times where you saw a sub come and you're like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, I'm grooving here. I'm good. Leave me alone.
So real quick story that I don't know if I shared with you before, but I think I run the ball down to like the 2 against Alabama. I waited my turn. I don't know if I was second or third that game, but I waited my turn, and then I had about 40 yards in that drive. I get down to the 2, and they bring Little Man in to try to jump him over the top, and I'm like, nope. Nope. I'm just standing there. He's waving me off. He comes in and stands right next to me like, dude, he told me to get you. I'm like, I don't care what he told you. I'm not going out. Then they send Charlie out there to get both of us out because we're out there arguing. So all three of us in the huddle arguing. And that Coach Cutcliffe had to call a timeout, and Coach Foreman met us on the sideline. It wasn't a very nice conversation, but none of us was going out. So then they put Mose in, gave him the ball, and I think he scored. So we had our moments, man. And like, if you talk to people on our team, like in practice, there were a lot of those instances where, if somebody hadn't played a lot, and then somebody that played a lot was trying to not practice, it didn't go very well. And Jay ended up getting a lot of reps. So we had our moments, but we never took it personal. It really was more to mess with the coaches probably than it was to mess with one another.
Yeah, I don't think people truly understand how much you guys still stay in contact and talk with each other. I mean, it's a brotherhood. Even though it was competitive as hell, it's a brotherhood that has stood 2 decades and continues to stand 2 decades. I got a couple other things. If I don't ask this, I'm going to get crucified by people. Everybody always asks about the screen pass at Notre Dame, obviously. You've told that story, I know, a million times to a lot of people. I'm going to ask it this way. When that was called, did you know it was going to do what it did? I mean, did you know it was the right call for what they were doing?
So I know, I let people into some of our little stories or some of our little conversations, but number one, I wasn't supposed to be in the game. Little man was the screen guy. And so they called it so quick that they couldn't get me out because we were on like the other hash. And so I never looked over there. They couldn't get me out. And then Coach just gave me the stay. And he gave me like a catch the ball. And I'm like, oh, hell, this is a screen. I've been dropping them all week in practice. Yeah. So if you notice, the best part about the screen is I back out because I want to catch the ball, where you're supposed to kind of go and look over your shoulder and kind of come back. If you look at the screen, I back out because I don't want to drop the ball. Because to be honest with you, once I saw the linebacker blitz, you practice that stuff so many times that that's really the only guy that can recognize it. So I saw the DN fall in the linebacker blitz, and I went, this is going to go pretty long. Now, the funny thing is, I'm only looking at Carl Pickens and the DB in the end zone. And by the time I realized that Carl Pickens has him blocked, I'm in the end zone. If you kind of watch the tape, you can kind of tell I kind of like started laughing and pointing that pick at the end because I really didn't know I was in the end zone because it was just so clean. So for me, to look at the film versus what I saw in the game, it's totally opposite of what I thought I saw because there was nothing there but picking that DB. So I don't really know at the time what's happening in front of me except Carl Pickens and the DB in the end zone. And by the time I get in there, I'm like, am I gonna make a move? What am I gonna do? He don't even see me. And next thing I know, I see Pick running to me to hug me and jumping on. I'm like, damn, I'm in the end zone. So it's just funny how that type of stuff happened. And it looks a lot different on TV than what's happening. So it's just so many things that I did wrong on that play, probably, but it was just such a perfect call that it turned out being a great play. And now it's like what, 80-some yards long by the time, every year I get 10 more yards when somebody tells me the story.
Right?
Yeah, and I don't correct anybody.
I got to go back and look that you caught that thing like a bread basket.
Yeah.
In the bread basket catch. I can go back and look at that. I not remember that. I remembered you backing out on that one.
Yeah, I back out on that.
That's a good one. All right, last thing about this team, and I'm going to let you go. How impressed are you with how this team has handled being in this situation where it was unexpected, right? I mean, how impressed are you with the maturity this team has handled themselves with through beating Florida, winning at LSU, Alabama, and then they obviously were ready to play against an inferior opponent yesterday? How impressed are you with the maturity of this team?
I tell you what I'm most impressed with because, I was kind of heavily, involved with the Pruitt era. And I don't have much, I would never say anything negative about JP, but one thing that I knew from just the kids that I'm close to up there is the environment was just it was a tougher environment. And so the one thing that I'm impressed with is the way that Heupel has those kids playing for one another, playing with like a chip on their shoulder, and they just seem like they're ready for the moment. I've seen so many times, I've been on teams that I felt like, in the moment back down to Alabama. But that team, I mean, after the fumble on the read option or the zone read, and we just gave him a touchdown, just to see Hooker get right back in the huddle and go lead the team down and score. I mean, to me, that's the thing that champions are made of. And so for them to go for where they were last year to literally throwing punch for punch with the best teams in the country, I mean, you can't do anything but say Hypo has that team ready. They're bought into it. They're defending the orange. Like, to me, that it's been a while since we defended being Tennessee. It's just like we wanted to get lucky and hope some breaks went our way, over these last probably decade. But this team is actually fighting and defending Tennessee. It reminds me so much of that 98 team in a different way, but they just seem like they're fighting and defending the Big Orange. And I'm proud to be an alum. I'm proud to see the way that these kids play. I'm proud of all these kids from Memphis that are representing. It's amazing how Tennessee is always good when kids from Tennessee are contributing. So I'm just proud of all those kids. I know a lot of them personally, and very proud of what Hypo's done. And he's doing it with Tennessee kids, and they just are bought in and they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, and they're so mature. That's just very mature team, and it's just fun to watch, man.
Yeah, it is. They haven't flinched at anything to this point. We'll see how they handle Saturday night when Kentucky comes to town. My man, it's great to catch up with you. Thanks for sharing some insight on how this offense is working. Thanks for a couple of trips down memory lane with me tonight. I appreciate it, my man.
Anytime, man. I consider you a good friend. You and tell Price next time he needs to show up as well. I know he's probably doing TV. He always wants to get on TV and be seen, but I know he's doing something where he's being seen right now. So tell him next time to make sure he make it.
All right. I'll make sure he gets with us next time. Hey, great to catch up with you. We'll talk soon down the road. All right, my man?
All right, Hubs.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right,
that
brother.
is Aaron Hayden, former Tennessee running back, sharing stories of the past and talking a lot about what this Tennessee football team is doing right now and what impresses him as a former player at the University of Tennessee. On the other side, Austin Price will join us. He's going to join us next, along with Eastern Kentucky head coach Walt Wells. Talk a little bit about the Wildcats. We'll talk a little recruiting at the end as well. That's all coming up next as you listen to the Rocky Top Rewind. Welcome back into the Rocky Top Rewind on a Sunday night as Tennessee beats UT Martin 65-24. Gets ready for the Kentucky Wildcats. Austin Price joins me on the Rewind here in the final segment. He was waiting in the wings. I could have brought you on with Aaron, but I didn't want you guys to have a celebrity death match here on the program. I'm sure y'all will catch up with that later. And I'm so happy to welcome to the program Eastern Kentucky head football coach Walt Wells. Walt knows a lot about the Wildcats. We'll talk about the Wildcats in just a moment. But if you aren't familiar with Walt Wells' story, it's been an adventuresome. Can I say adventuresome, Walt? How do I describe what fall's been like for you right now?
It's been crazy, that's for sure. It's been a different fall. It's been a hard fall, but we're getting through the weeds now. We're starting to come up for air.
All right. For those who don't know and haven't read the story, Walt Wells suffered a major heart attack in the office. It's a story that was written in Sports Illustrated. Fortunate to be with us, Walt still is. I know the medical care, the people that found you, Walt, was the timing on that worked out to where you're still with us here. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about that. I know you're tired of talking about that, but I do want to ask you how has it changed your perspective in coaching, going through what you went through this year?
Well, I think it changes your perspective in life. I mean, it was less than a little over 8 weeks ago that, about 5 feet away from me right there, I was on the ground dead for about 4 minutes. And it lets you know the people that are around you, you got to cherish them. They're, our Kristen Peterson, who was our head athletic trainer, and Thomas Bowling, who's my DFO. They both saved my life, and Zach, who was an assistant trainer, also was right there with them. They got my heartbeat back. They got me going again until they did the defibrillator, the whole 9 yards, and got me back. And for 2.5 days, I was I didn't know what was going on. I was just asleep, I guess. And I wake up and realize what's happened. And you look at your wife of almost 25 years now, and your daughter who's 22 and your son who's 17, and you realize I got a lot of things to live for other than 4th and 1. And not that that's not important on Saturday night, but it's not important on Tuesday afternoon in July. And I think I'll learn that as we continue to move forward. Not to do your job, but to take time to do things with other people too.
Well, the Colonel's got a big win, 58-55 over the weekend. That's probably not good for the old heart there, Walt. Defensive coordinator's got to do you better than that. I mean, geez. The good thing you got a Tennessee boy pulling the trigger up there for you, though.
Hey, no question. Hey, he's Tennessee boy too, and he's one of the most special ones I've been around. And he's a really good football player for us. Parker McKinney from Cofield. But yeah, the first game back we went 7 overtimes and won. So it's been I've been tested. That was 10 days probably after I got out of the hospital. So I've been tested pretty hard. Last week I got after the officials pretty good. My wife, my wife got after me pretty good that night and then let me know that, hey, just relax on the officials. Let somebody else. I'm like, hey, honey, no, we'll be all right. But yeah, it was fun. And Parker is it's a blessing. I mean, he was here when I got here. Parker is obviously was state champion at Cofield and Mr. Football in Single A, and he's just a really good football player. He won the game for us.
Walt was a part of the staff with Butch Jones, 2016, 2017, the offensive line coach that last year. Then was at Kentucky under Mark Stoops for a couple of years. So you're familiar with both programs as far as historical stuff. I know you're doing your own thing, coaching your own team, but
right.
These are kind of two contrasting styles, Walt. You got, the tempo and going fast in Tennessee, and then you got Kentucky who wants to slow it down and run it.
I would say it's the end of both spectrums. And, I've obviously watched Tennessee and know what Josh Heupel does over there, and he's doing a fantastic job. And they're trying to snap that thing as quick as they can get it snapped, I'm sure, especially as the drives go on. But Mark's style's a little different. He's a really good defensive coach, or that's how he made his hay until he became a really good head coach. But they're gonna spend their time in the huddle. They're gonna get the long play call out. It's a West Coast offense. It's gonna have great verbiage and wristbands and all that stuff you've got to go through and to communicate to the huddle and get the huddle call out. And I would say they'll snap the ball most times under 10. And that's just how they are. I mean, that's no secret. If you watch them play on TV, that's who they are. And I think that's how they're built.
Well, why has Mark Stoops been able to do at Kentucky, sustain success at Kentucky that nobody else had been able to kind of uncover? They had a couple of moments and some runs with some coaches. Why has he been able to do what nobody has been able to do at Kentucky for a long time?
Well, I think the first thing he did is he established a recruiting area that he could go win. And that was the state of Kentucky, which he's won, and then the state of Ohio, which he's gone and got some really good football players. And, Michigan was down at some of that time, and so he was able to steal some guys that, let's just say, Ohio State didn't want, but were still really good football players. And, maybe would have went to Michigan State, maybe would have went to Penn State. But they wanted to come play in the SEC, and Kentucky was their offer, and they went to Kentucky. I think he does a great job of getting out and identifying talent. He's a really good football coach, and he's detail oriented, and but he's not going to make you a robot. He's not going to make his team a robot. And so I think, then Mitch Barnhart gave him some time early on, and I think that was critical. And you saw the fruits of his labor starting really in 2016 when I think it was when they made their first bowl game. 2017, they started making some headway. And then I got there in 2018, and we won 10 games and went to the Citrus Bowl. And then the next year we won 9 games and went to the Belt Bowl. COVID wasn't friendly to him, but then boom, you're right back in the Citrus Bowl the next year, and so 10 wins. I mean, it's. I've been in the state of Kentucky coaching since 1997, except for a year at South Florida, a year at New Mexico State, and 2 years at Tennessee. And what he's done at the University of Kentucky, I don't know if it could ever be rematched by somebody else, because it's just hard to sustain that over 10 years like he has. He's good to work for, but he's turned over staff just because guys have gotten other opportunities and went and did them. And so I think, and then he's hired really good people. And I think the biggest thing with Mark is he's such a good guy. And I know that probably ain't popular with your fans, but he's a great person. And you talk about, just think about this, right? I worked for him in 18 and 19. I watched him handle the John Schlarman situation. If that doesn't tell you what type of person he is, nothing else really will. But then when I get into my situation, he's calling the UK off the medical center and all that, and making sure I got anything I need, anything and everything I need. He didn't have to do that. I mean, they're getting ready to play whoever their first game was. He's just a good person.
Well, when you look at Kentucky, obviously they're going to try to run it with Rodriguez and ball control. Last year, I forget the number of Hubs. Was it 40? Was it 45 to 15 or whatever it was, in time of possession? It was just some silly number.
I mean, it was crazy. I remember, yes.
It was just ridiculous. Whatever it was ridiculous. Can they do that again this year? Because it feels like Tennessee's much better against the run, Walt, than they were a year ago, which it basically is strength on strength instead of strength on weakness.
Well, I don't know if that'll be their game plan or not. Quite frankly, I hadn't talked to them that much since we started seasons. But Chris Rodriguez is a really good football player, and he's really hard to tackle with one man. And what I've seen of Tennessee, I know their defense is playing as one, and their defense is playing with a lot of energy, a lot of juice, which is what you've got to have on defense. I mean, you've got to have some want to and things like that to go get it. And I think that's where Tennessee has improved. Now, that doesn't mean they're not better players and all that. I'm not saying any of that. But, to sit there and say that Kentucky can't do that, the way they've ran the ball in the past, it's hard not to say that they can't. You have to worry about Will Levis. Will Levis, we're fortunate enough to have a couple of kids that are either get drafted or be in camps. And every scout that comes through here tells me he's a top 10 pick. So you can't ignore that. And just like they can't ignore Hendon Hooker, right? He may win the Heisman Trophy and may be the best player in college football. So I think, you can't just load the box up and say, all right, Will can't beat us. I don't think that's the case. They are young at receiver. But they do have some talent there. And, Barry Brown from Pearl Cone has got some elite speed. And you can see that, from the plays that he's made against some really, good athletes out there. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that they can't, but I understand what you're saying. And I think it will be a struggle to line up and keep the ball for 45 minutes. But, you never know if turnovers happen and different things like that, they might have the possibility of doing that.
Certainly, as a contrasting style, is going to be an interesting matchup, but between those two teams for sure. Well, I want to ask you a non-Kentucky question here.
Right.
UT Martin was in town. That's a game that Tennessee plays that Martin's playing for the paycheck. Okay, I mean, you schedule that game for the paycheck. You're in a conference where your budget depends. I mean, if you don't make your budget, if you don't make money for the university, then other sports can't exist.
Right.
When you look at the future of college football and the talk of 10 conference games and all these types of things out there, where are your biggest concerns moving forward for your level of football where you're at Eastern Kentucky?
Well, I think the bottom line is everything we're hearing is the NCAA is going to come out with a minimum amount of money you have to spend on athletics, and I think it's going to be around 25, 30 million for the university. We don't spend that right now. Now, we aren't far from that, and I think we have plans to get to that. 25 would be a heck of a lot easier than 30 for us, but it's still, it's still doable. And I think that's going to separate, where we are to where like the Middle Tennessees, the Western Kentuckys, the Charlottes, and all of them are. And then what it'll end up doing is pushing our level down a little bit, because then they'll de-emphasize the money that is used in football. And, and that's going to hurt the game. It's going to hurt the development of the game. And, the transfer portal is already hurting it a little bit, because as soon as we get a guy that's really talented, somebody's recruiting him. And so we have to continue to understand that. And we've got to figure out ways to try to keep them. We don't have the alumni base financially that, Tennessee has, to where they can go and grab corporations to NIL them and different things like that. So the game is going to change here in the next, I would say, 2 to 5 years dramatically. I don't think it affects, obviously, the SEC at all. I think they'll be the ones that break away. There'll be there 45 or 50 of them that are playing with that high dollar mark, and then the rest of them will be playing for bowl games, and then everybody else will go down to Division II probably and play that away in football.
Well, Walt, we appreciate you joining us. We're so glad that you could be on this show tonight. And
no question.
And you tell our boy K-Ron, we said hello. You still got some guys that you recruited on this current team, including guys like Jerome Carvin from back in, when you were here in 2017. So I know you've got a little bit of tie a lot of different places.
Well, I tell you what, it was, when Tennessee beat Alabama, it was funny. My son and Trey Smith had such a special relationship, and so we're all three in a text group, and Trey smoking his cigar. Of course, up until about 2 months ago, I'd have smoked a cigar with him, but the old wife's not letting me have a cigar or a beer. But I keep all that down.
I thought you told her you were good for another 45 or 50 years now.
She ain't buying that right now.
She bought it at that Arby's on the way home from the hospital.
You ain't supposed to tell that.
Give me them French fries. Give me them curly fries.
Hey, curly fries and an Arby's roast beef sandwich. I couldn't beat it. But yeah, there's so many guys still. I mean, Ollie Lane's dad sent me a really nice text. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys on that team that, yes, I was involved in, and very happy for them, very happy for the state of Tennessee. You know me, born and raised in Nashville. I love Tennessee, so I really appreciate it.
Well, Walt, we appreciate it. Good luck, and tell KJ, catch us a touchdown on Friday night, all right?
He'll need to. I appreciate that. Thanks again for having me, guys. It's good to see y'all.
Good to see you, Walt. Thanks, buddy.
Yes,
Take care of yourself, my man.
I'll do it. Thank you.
All right. That's Walt Wells, the head coach at Eastern Kentucky, giving a little insight on the Wildcats. He knows Mark Stoops. He knows what they're all about. Austin, I know we're up against it, about to wrap it up. This is a real conflicting style game here. Whose personality wins will dictate what this game looks like. If Tennessee's personality rises to the top, Kentucky's going to have a hard time. If Kentucky's personality wins, Tennessee's going to be in a dogfight that a lot of fans aren't expecting right now.
Yeah. I think for Kentucky to win this game, Tennessee, they've got to turn Tennessee over. So that's something Tennessee's not really done this year. Even the few times they've coughed it up, they've been able to get back on the ball. Hendon Hooker, obviously, with only the one pick. And I think Barryon Brown has to be a game changer in special teams. Tennessee's got to avoid letting him get loose in kick returns and punt returns.
All right, quickly in recruiting, anything they pick up Caleb Beasley on Friday night. It feels like the class of 24 is where this season is making the most hay for Tennessee in recruiting. That's not to say they're not 23s. It's not having an effect, but it feels like the 24s is where Tennessee's using this start to really make some hay. Is that fair or unfair?
Yeah, they've got 4 commits in the 24 class, Brent, and they're all really, really good players. Whether it's Carson Gentle, Caleb Beasley, Eccles, Mazio Bennett, 4 really, really good pieces. They're also in position with other in-state guys, out-of-state players. So, yeah, 24 is where they're really kind of making their biggest move. But you would probably think that, right? Because most of the 23 class kind of the hay's in the barn. But there are some, David Hobbs. We'll see if Tennessee is able to get Stanton Ramil to take a visit. They've had some conversations the last couple of weeks. There are some players in that 23 class Tennessee's still after. But, Tennessee obviously just offered Khalifa Keith, the running back from down there, Birmingham, that's committed to Kentucky.
Yeah, it's trying to make some noise with some 23s and obviously with 24. We'll see what the unofficial visitor list looks like this week. We'll see where they go official visits or not a lot of official visits this weekend. We'll see how that plays out as well. So keep it at Volquest. We'll have all the updates for you as things start to take shape later on in the week. And don't forget, we'll have Josh Heupel at the podium tomorrow. We got 3-2-1. We got other recruiting coverage. Don't forget to hit the like button on this. Get this video to 500 likes. Continue to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tell everybody about this show. We got Tennessee Prime coming up on Tuesday night. We got all of our other video stuff, and we've got that great $1 deal going for you at volquest.com. Hey, we can do this show without Eric Kane, right? AP?
We can do a lot without Eric Kane.
Eric will be back with us next Sunday night, and we'll continue to talk Tennessee football on a Sunday night on one of our favorite evenings to do with the Rocky Top Rewind. Special thanks to Aaron Hayden for his insight and storytelling tonight, and thanks to Walt Wells for his insight on the Kentucky Wildcats. Good luck to Eastern Kentucky coming up this weekend. He is Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for this installment of the Rewind. Have a great rest of your Sunday and a great week, everybody.